Thanks everybody for joining us. We have Katherine Wagner here, who is a consultant psychologist. Katherine facilitates a lot of workplace training and workshops on a variety of topics such as stress, general well-being, mindfulness, and effective communication, which I think kind of also comes into today a little bit. But Katherine, you've had a lot of experience with, helping organizations manage psychosocial risks and the impacts of various risks that they may face. And, I think bullying and harassment at work is a pretty big one. From your experience, is that something that you tend to address and have addressed a lot over the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely, Sally, and welcome everybody. Nice to be here. And the good thing is we're now talking more about, bullying openly as we are today. So I think people are slowly getting more comfortable, coming forward. But that's really what I guess today is about, encouraging everyone to speak up early, get support early, and be on the lookout so that we can intervene early if we think it could be happening in our team, because it definitely is still happening.
Yeah, exactly right. I just wanted to kind of do a little quick poll just to gain everyone understandings of the prevalence of workplace bullying in Australia. I just wonder what percentage of Australian workers reported workplace bullying in a 2024 survey. It is actually 30%. So if you think about that, that's a third of people heading to work in 2024 said that reported workplace bullying. Now, in my books, that's a pretty significant number, something that I think that we all really need to address. It comes up a lot in the work that we do here at Leapwell, both from an organizational perspective and an individual perspective. So, Katherine, I thought before we got into what it looks like, how it shows up and its impact, it would be good to maybe define what workplace bullying is, if you could kind of let us know what the definition might be.
Yeah, definitely, Sally. It's a good place to start. Safe Work Australia says that bullying is repeated behaviour, so unwelcome behaviour directed towards an employee or even a group of employees. And this behaviour could reasonably pose a risk to those people's mental and sometimes even physical health, because we know that stress down the track can affect us physically. So it's really this repeated, unwelcome, and could reasonably cause, harm our health as a result of that behaviour.
Yep. And I know you said it's, it tends to be repeated behaviour. I think it can get a little bit murky in understanding what is and what is not bullying. What are some things that come up that people may think is bullying that probably usually isn't bullying?
Yeah, that's a good question. It could be, reasonable performance management, that's handled sensitively and fairly. It could be just having a difference of opinion with someone in the workplace. We're never going to be agreeing upon everything, as we all know. It could be you might be someone who prefers to be around more quieter types of people, but there may be someone in the team who is quite direct and loud with everyone. So it doesn't mean when they're interacting with you that that's, necessarily bullying. So there's a whole lot of instances. Or it could be just getting some general constructive feedback or direction from a leader. So it may not be all that comfortable, we know, at times, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily bullying.
Yeah. So the kind of repeated aspect of it kind of tends to help us identify bullying a little bit better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But as it says there on your slide, that even just one single incident, though, of really, unreasonable behaviour, which could pose a risk to someone's mental health and safety, may not be deemed bullying because it's not repeated at that stage, but it still would warrant, a discussion and intervention around that kind of conduct at work.
Yeah, of course.
But you go. Sorry, Sally.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's generally speaking, it's ongoing. So it happens over a period of time. But how might it start?
Yeah, well, there could be some small kind of early warning signs, which if it's happening to us, we might kind of try to dismiss, or if we're witnessing it, we might kind of make excuses and think, oh, that was a one-off, or that's just their personality style, or they're just trying to be funny. But it could be things like inappropriate jokes, kind of singling someone out in the team. It could be withholding information from someone that they really need to do their job, or those early kind of times where people are going out to lunch together and everyone's invited on those first few occasions, but someone isn't, and they're starting to feel left out. Or it could be that you feel that you're getting a bit more scrutiny than other people in the team. And at first we can dismiss this, but if we see it is an ongoing pattern starting to make us feel uncomfortable, it's definitely worth looking at. And we'll talk about, talking to someone about that.
Yeah. So can I throw a scenario at you? Just because I think it's hard because there are so many different situations where this may arise. And I think something that often comes up is people feeling bullied by a manager. So, for example, if there is a manager who is, repeatedly dismissing someone's comments in a team meeting or interrupting them in a team meeting, could that be considered bullying?
Well, there'd be a few kind of little nuances I'd be wondering about in that scenario, Sally and everyone. So what I would kind of say for the person who might be experiencing that, I'd be wondering, have they brought that to this manager's attention? Because sometimes, managers may have a bit of a blind spot. It may not be intentional. But if they had, for instance, let this manager know that, hey, look, there's been a few occasions where you've spoken over me or I haven't had the chance to share what I've been wanting to share, and they kind of dismissed your concerns and it continued. So there's that kind of pattern of behaviour, which we reasonably could cause you to feel some kind of mental harm or emotional harm, because you might start to feel really kind of disrespected and not valued because you have, spoken up. So potentially that could be deemed as bullying. Or if, let's say, other people in the group are becoming aware of that pattern as well, and they're, kind of saying to this person, gee, we've noticed you're not getting the chance to talk. So they're aware of this pattern, that could also suggest bullying. I mean, every case is slightly different, but I would definitely say in that instance, it'd be important to see whether the manager just has maybe a bit of a poor communication style and it's not intentional. But if indeed it has been brought to their attention and it continues, and it seems this person is kind of being singled out, that may, indeed be bullying.
Yeah.
Does that make it a bit more clear?
Yeah, it does. I mean, everything, it's very situational, isn't it? So it really needs to be something that can be addressed and then see how it kind of emerges from there, whether it stops or whether it is that ongoing. You did mention how the impacts on someone's mental health and then the impact on the team. So I think it's important to talk about what impact it does have, because it doesn't just affect that individual at work. It affects their life. It affects who they are and how they can cope with things. And then, as you said before, it kind of starts to affect the team, and that can in turn affect the organization. So what are some of the things that you can notice to kind of establish whether something might be bullying?
Yeah, well, the impacts for the individual, and we're all, quite different in how we respond and how we display signs of stress. But a person might start to become really quiet because they can't really concentrate because they're so caught up in worrying about this feeling of being bullied.
Yeah.
They might experience anxiety, stress. They might have sleeping problems. It might affect their home life because they're so consumed with this fear of perhaps going to work. It could affect their attendance. They don't come to work, or if indeed when they do go to work, the presenteeism, so they might be there but actually not able to concentrate and be at their best. That could lead to errors at work. It can affect the team because people might not be understanding why this person is not contributing like before. So that could contribute to some tension. Or if others in the team are aware that this kind of pattern of behaviour is happening towards this person, they might also start to feel, quite unsafe. So it can affect the shared psychological safety in the team. And also down the track, it can affect business and profitability even if people are not performing well because they're feeling bullied or not coming to work, all that disruption. So it affects the individual, how they feel, how they are in their personal and health kind of related part of their life, and also the team and the business. So it's got really, flow-on effects for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. So I jumped ahead a little bit there. I
Yeah.
did want to go back and just kind of identify some of the things on how bullying shows up, because, you know, when we think of bullying, or when a lot of us think of bullying, we think of like, you know, shaking the finger and yelling at someone or humiliating them publicly. But that's not necessarily the only way that bullying shows up. There's direct bullying and indirect bullying. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Sally. And you're right. We often think of the really loud, as you say there, loud and obvious kind of signs of bullying. But there's many kind of subtle, more insidious forms, which still can be really harmful. And I'm sure many of us on the line here, you know, can relate to this from some part of our career. It could be someone, as we said, just not receiving the information they need to do their job and repeatedly being left out of, you know, maybe an email trail. It might be a person having their roster changed deliberately to kind of disadvantage them. It might be someone not being included in meetings or not being invited out to social things repeatedly within the group. It could be someone in the team deliberately spreading malicious gossip about a person and rumours about them. It could just be someone feeling ignored at work. You know, everyone else is acknowledged and everyone says hi to everyone else except them. So these are the kind of more insidious, kind of subtle forms, which of course still can be really harmful, as we said.
Mm, mm. You know what I think would be challenging is, you know, the impact on the individual is really important. But what about the intent of the people who are in effect doing the bullying? You know, you say people are going to lunch and somebody's feeling left out. Is that necessarily bullying?
Yeah, that's a good point, Sally. And I didn't mean to make that sound like that's a general kind of principle.
Sure,
Of course not.
sure.
So it's kind of the nuances and the context of the
Yes.
situation. But let's say someone always was a part of a kind of lunch group at work, but now suddenly they've been not included. And maybe they've spoken up and said, hey guys, don't forget about me. You know, I still want to come, but they're still not included. I think that would still warrant some further conversations to check, you know, what the intention may be. But over time, if we gather that sense through our conversations and maybe advice that we seek, that someone is deliberately not being included in things, well, that could, you know, potentially be bullying. But absolutely, it's a case-by-case basis. And yeah, we've got to check on those kind of nuanced contextual factors as well.
Sure. What I'm hearing a lot in what you're saying is it matters what happens after it's addressed, right? So if it continues after it's addressed, then, you know, it can then definitely be, sorry, not definitely, but then can be considered bullying if it continues after it has been addressed. So I think, though, that is probably the hardest part of it. You know, somebody is feeling bullied or left out, or especially if it's you're feeling bullied by a manager. Where do we start? How do we speak up when we kind of identify that maybe I'm being bullied, or maybe I'm seeing someone being bullied? What do we do first?
Yeah, well, so let's just say you are the person that you might be feeling you're being bullied. Is that okay to start there?
Yeah, let's go for it. Yep.
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, take some quiet time just to stop and pause and reflect. You might even want to start keeping a few notes about when you perceive this is happening, just to get a bit of clarity. Often we doubt ourselves and we think, you know, am I just imagining things here? So having that bit of clarity might help. I would say to you, if you feel comfortable and safe, and you may not, and that's okay, but you might want to try to address it directly with the person. So the person who may not be inviting you to lunch and is organising those things, you might even want to call, say, the EAP before that to get a bit of support and a bit of guidance. So yeah, if you're comfortable, you might address the person directly, but often, and let's say it was a manager that you're feeling these issues with, I would suggest that you for sure, say, call the EAP or go to your HR, people and culture, or another trusted manager, just to really talk about how you're feeling, to get some advice about your options, because there's always a step you can take. And I know it might feel uncomfortable and it might feel scary, but we want everyone to know that the right thing to do is not to let yourself feel isolated as though you need to cope alone. There's always someone you can talk to. And if in doubt, that's where I would suggest just call the EAP. It's totally confidential, separate from the workplace, a free service. But yeah, I think the note taking, talk to someone, look at what your options are, and then you can make a decision about, the next small step forward. So at least you feel you're doing something, you feel some sense of empowerment.
Yeah. If someone does feel the confidence to address it directly with the individual, which is probably for most of us one of the hardest things to do you have a structure of a sentence or a structure of how they might go about sharing the impact on them?
Yeah, definitely, Sally. But once again, I'd really suggest that someone calls the EAP to get just that emotional support before doing that. Absolutely, yeah. But what you may wish to do, it's like any kind of challenging conversation. The hardest part is just trying to stay calm. So take some deep breaths beforehand. You may even want to prepare just some key points, some evidence-based points about when this has happened, and then use lots of I statements if you can. So you might want to put it into a framework of, hey, let's say Katherine is the perceived bully. Katherine, I'd just like to chat to you just about how our lunch breaks are going these days, just something to do with people going out to lunch. When would be a good time? Then you might want to say, I've just noticed on the last 4 weeks of the lunch dates that are set, I haven't been invited, and I'm just confused about, whether that's deliberate or because I would like to be involved, and I just wanted to talk with you about that and see your perspective and, see if there's a way that I can get involved again. So you're not targeting the person, you're not blaming them, coming from that space of what you're perceiving and how it's impacting you. Now, if that doesn't work well and the person gets defensive or you feel worse after that conversation, then please remember there's always a next step. And it may mean escalating it to your manager or someone else trusted in the workplace.
Yeah, great. I think the important thing to note is that conversation is not about accusing someone. It's about sharing how you're feeling and how you felt in those situations to hopefully move forward and it stop happening. It's not about, starting an argument or accusing them. It's about letting them into how it's impacting you, and hopefully they can be open to hearing that and maybe, including you further.
Yeah, for sure. And even, Sally, before that, one step might be to actually talk to your manager or HR and let them know, hey, this is what I'm thinking to do as a first step. Can I then check in with you afterwards to let you know how it went? Because sometimes we just feel more confident if we've got that person checking back in with us, so we don't feel as alone. So that might be another strategy.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Write down a few of the notes, speak to a support person, take some time out to make sure you're calm before you have that conversation and see how it goes. But of course, we don't always feel comfortable doing that. So reaching out for support and some advice and to take that next step is really good advice too. Yeah. So why do you think that it is difficult to take that step? Why is it difficult for us to speak up? What are some of the reasons that stop us from doing that?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, if you are experiencing bullying, you're going to be feeling vulnerable and sensitive already. So probably any next step might feel a little bit daunting. But again, we want you to have the courage and remember, just take one small step. But people often might be fearful of, will it make things worse? What will the process be? Will this be kept confidential? Will I be believed? Am I just imagining things? Who do I go to talk about this? Do we have any policies to protect me? So that's why getting as empowered as you can, knowing your options, knowing the processes in the workplace. And remember, in the modern world, most workplaces do have a policy, even if it's a bullying policy or a grievance policy. We know that there's other agencies like the Fair Work Commission, human rights. There's a lot of organisations involved in this now as well. So please remember, you do have that kind of structure of support where you can go to for further guidance if need be. But yeah, definitely there's some of the worries that people have had in the past.
Yeah,
and even now.
I think a lot of people do worry that, what's going to happen after they speak up? What's going to happen after this person knows that I've, spoken to HR about them, for example? And a lot of people also don't really know how to take on that information. If they see someone being bullied or someone comes to them, how can we support someone who is experiencing bullying, especially if they come to us for help, whether we're a colleague, a manager, or HR?
Yeah, no, really important point, Sally. And look, as we said, people might be fearful to come and talk because they're worrying about what are you going to do with this information? Will it be kept confidential? So absolutely, whether you're a peer or HR or manager, do make sure that you're aware of your kind of responsibilities to treat that information really sensitively. You might need to refer to policies if you are a manager or get some support from HR. And also if you're a peer, being sensitive that someone has opened up to experience to share this with you, you might want to say something like, look, thank you for sharing that with me. I know this sounds like you're going through something quite difficult. So showing empathy. Now, showing empathy doesn't mean we're necessarily agreeing with them and telling them, yes, that's bullying. You want to make sure that you're staying calm and neutral, but you can for sure say, look, I can see that you're really upset, and look, do you want to step away and we can have a quiet chat over here? So keep it a nice supportive kind of tone to the conversation. I would say then just use your best listening skills. Try not to interrupt. If you're a manager, you may want to try to help the person to be a little bit specific about what they're reporting. So try to get them to talk about specific incidences and behaviours that are bothering them. You don't want to push as well, so give the person a bit of time to talk. It may take some time for them to kind of collect their thoughts and be really clear and logical. Also, if you're a manager or if you're a peer, try to be collaborative. We don't want to just be telling someone what they should do. But you might want to ask them, look, have you got any ideas about the next step forward? Or as a manager, you might say, look, what would you like me to do? Is there anything you'd like me to do to get involved? Or if you're a peer and it's your colleague, you might even say, is there a way that I can support you? Which might mean, just meeting up to have another coffee with them and check on how things are going. But absolutely, if you're in HR or you're a manager, there's more of a responsibility on you to take some action collaboratively with the person, work out what they'd like to see happen, and then really document and keep checking back in on them. Because as a manager, you really need to make sure you're monitoring the situation to ensure that it is, improving. Because once again, bullying can be like a psychosocial hazard in the workplace, something that can be harmful and a safety risk.
Yeah, for sure. I think just staying on what managers can do, what I hear a lot is that, managers generally become managers because they're very good at their jobs, and then they become a manager and they have to often lead a team and deal with team dynamics and a lot of things like, responding to bullying that maybe they haven't had training on, they don't feel like they have the skills. So just, if an employee hasn't necessarily come to them, but they've noticed bullying, should they pull the individuals or the group up on the spot? Should they do it in one-on-one meetings? I know every situation is different, but what kind of things can they do if someone hasn't necessarily come to them with an issue, but they've noticed it?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, Sally. And number one, they'd need to do something. Now, in the past, decades ago, managers might have thought, well, I can just pretend I didn't see that. I don't need to get involved and brush it under the carpet. Things do tend to get worse when we do that. And now there is that responsibility, given that potential bullying could be a psychosocial hazard. We can't ignore a hazard in the workplace. So yeah, it would depend upon the situation, as you said. If it feels reasonable and relevant in that meeting, the manager may stop the meeting and just say, hey guys, I just want to remind us all of the kind of code of conduct and what our values are here when we're talking together in a group, that we don't, over talk each other. So they might do it more kind of generally like that. And then they may quietly afterwards, because we want to protect people's, level of dignity and not, embarrass people. They may want to quietly take the person involved aside and have a chat about their behaviour, but also separately check in on the person who might be feeling uncomfortable from that meeting. So it's really offering support to those involved and treating everyone with dignity and respect, but definitely doing something.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is doing it early.
Yeah.
Don't let it go on, don't let it fester, don't let it continue to happen, because the impacts can be great and they are real. So what I'm hearing from you is, if you see it, if you're experiencing it, if you're a manager, do something about it early if you can.
Yeah, and even if you're a bystander, so a peer, we can do something just as a peer, which won't be as formal as what a manager's responsibility.
Yeah.
But you may want to check in on the person who's experiencing the bullying and say, hey, I noticed how that person spoke to you. I just wanted to see, are you okay? Anything I can do to support you? And, we have options here at work if that made you uncomfortable. Or if you felt comfortable, you could talk to the kind of perpetrator yourself, only if you're comfortable as a bystander, or you may feel you want to report it to another manager. So if all of us are taking the time to respond quickly, that's how bullying doesn't get to fester and grow in a workplace. We're kind of trying to stamp it out as much as we can.
Yeah, every single person is responsible for creating a respectful workplace and a respectful culture. It doesn't just fall on the leaders.
Yes.
While they do have some serious responsibility, we're all there. We're all communicating with each other every day. It's kind of everybody's responsibility, isn't it?
For sure. And silence isn't neutral. If you're witnessing it and not doing anything, that's not a neutral response. That's actually normalizing. It could normalize that behavior in the culture. So we all have a very powerful role to create the right kind of culture that we want to work in.
Yeah, just touching on that as well, we've spoken about what we can do if we're witnessing bullying or if we're being bullied. I did want to touch on, being self-aware and maybe addressing our own behaviors to make sure that maybe we are not making someone feel bullied or excluded or whatever that might be. What kind of things should we watch out for in ourselves to make sure that we are treating other people with respect in the workplace and how we're communicating?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And look, when we're feeling in a great mood, when we're rested and sleeping well, often our, behavior is pretty respectful. It's a lot easier to act respectfully. But I think we've got to just be more mindful, particularly when we might be going through a stressful period ourselves, or you might be really tired and irritable. That's where I think we do need to stop and check in on ourselves more than ever, and just make sure that we're still using an appropriate tone of voice, that we're letting other people speak. Even if we're feeling a bit impatient and tired, we do need to check in on ourselves and even ask for some feedback, from time to time. If you get the sense that someone may have misperceived what you said, maybe ask them, what did I do there? And is there anything I could do differently time? Because self-awareness is really where it all starts. And often I think we're not doing it deliberately, but especially during those more tricky conversations where our emotions start to rise, stress levels rise, that's where we can not be as mindful about our communication style. So extra deep breaths during those times and reminding ourselves, no, I'm still going to treat everyone with dignity and respect here at work.
Yeah, I think, most things probably start with a bit of self-awareness, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And we can all at times have blind spots, we go through challenges and we're not that aware of how we're coming across. So it's worth checking in from time to time.
Yeah, I agree. So we're coming to the end of the webinar today. I did want to just put a few things out there for people to take with them, whether it's recognizing concerning behavior around you that other people might be conducting themselves in a disrespectful way, or not being that bystander who stays silent and speaking up and supporting those around you, or maybe starting with a bit of self-awareness and reflecting on your own behavior as well. And just so everybody is aware of Leapwell's contact details, if this has brought anything up for you, if you have seen something or you're experiencing something, or you want a little bit of advice on a difficult situation you've seen or been involved in, please do give us a call on 1300 908 031 to get some support, or you can email us at eap@leapwell.com.au. That's us for today. Katherine, thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful knowledge with us. I hope that everybody has got something out of today, and can go away being a little bit more respectful and speaking up for those around you, and hopefully sticking up for yourself as well.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Sally, and everybody for joining the webinar.
Thanks, Katherine. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, everyone.